Mate.
Welcome one, welcome all to Season 10, Episode 37 of the Ubuntu podcast. It's Tuesday, the 14th of November, and we're going to discuss what's been happening in the news and in the community. I'm Mark, and joining me this week are the two fine gents, Alan.
Hello.
And Martin.
Hello, hello.
So Alan, what have you been up to since last we spoke?
Well, I replaced some bits on some hardware with some different bits on that hardware. I know, right?
And has it made everything better?
No, but I feel better for it.
Okay.
I've got a couple of routers at home, or routers, shall we say, at home.
Let's not say routers.
Okay,
let's say routers like
okay.
English people do.
And they were running OpenWRT from some time ago, and someone in our Ubuntu podcast Telegram channel, which is ubuntupodcast.org/telegram, suggested that maybe I should want to upgrade to LEDE, which is the replacement.
What's LEDE?
So apparently there was a kind of fork of OpenWRT, should we say,
right,
to a new project called LEDE, LEDE. I think we mentioned it a few weeks ago.
Yes,
yeah,
briefly.
And I'm always wary of touching networking kit, especially at home when I'm not the only person. Like if I was the only person who lived here, then I wouldn't really care and I'd hack about with it and do it all the time. But my wife needs to be able to get access to company VPN for work, so I need to not break that. And the kids want to watch Netflix and YouTube and play games and stuff, and I need to not break that. Plus, I need to be able to work and, do a podcast now and then. So I was always wary, but he very kindly... actually, I should tell you the person's name. It was Jeffrey Bouter in our Telegram. So thank you, Jeffrey. He gave me all the info I needed. Like found the download links, told me what version I should be running, and gave me some tips on how to do it. And I did one of the routers, and it took 10 minutes and kept all my data and kept all my settings. Excellent. And then a bit later on, when everyone went to bed, I did the other one, and everything works fine. And now I'm on a newer kernel. It's all patched, and I'm very happy with LEDE.
Excellent.
Cool.
I'd just like to take this opportunity to apologise to Jeffrey for killing him by shooting him in the face in Rust last week.
So, Martin, what have you been doing other than murdering innocent avatars?
Shooting listeners of the podcast. Yes, other than that. I'm 1 year wiser. So, yes, that's what I've been doing.
That must be a lot of
becoming
years now.
more wise and thoughtful, apparently.
Congratulations on clinging to a rock orbiting the sun for another year.
Yep. It's been a hell of a journey this last year. I've had to cling more tightly than ever before, but we got there all in one piece.
Well, Clark.
So yeah.
How do you celebrate your annual achievement?
When?
How?
Well, this year I took the girls to the cinema, and we went
did you leave them there
afterwards? Hey, no,
What did you
just
see?
Nothing. We saw Paddington 2.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
Yes, it was very good, very enjoyable.
I saw Thor the other day, the new one, which is interesting. A bit more Guardians of the Galaxy inspired than the previous film.
Oh,
excellent!
Does it have characters from Guardians of the Galaxy in it?
No, but it's not a direct crossover, but they've taken a lot of the humour aspect from
I'd
Guardians
heard
of the
that
Galaxy.
it's got a much more humorous portrayal. Yeah,
yes.
I took the kids to see Paddington at the weekend as well, with a bag full of sweets and popcorn and stuff. And if anyone is thinking of going to see it, go and see it and stay in the cinema after the credits. You absolutely have to stay all the way through and wait for the bit at the end. It is a pinnacle of entertainment. It really is. You absolutely have to stay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, on that note, on with the show.
And now it is time for the news. And good news! GoPro have open sourced their Cineform codec.
These are the people who make cameras, right?
They do. I'm not super familiar. All I know is very adventurous types have GoPro cameras, sellotape to their forehead or wherever, when they're cycling or surfing, things of that nature.
These are all very active people who have GoPro
They
cameras.
are active people with, sticky back plastic on their cameras.
I think actually they have mounts. Whenever I see one of these things being unboxed, there are lots and lots of plastic pieces in the box and how you can mount the camera up various orientations on the side of motorcycle helmets and clamped to motorbikes. And I love the output generated by the people who create content with GoPro stuff. But this is interesting, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, yeah. So, they have their own codec. They've been working on this for years and years, apparently. I had no idea it had been around for so long. And it's been adopted in lots of different places. And it has even made the transition to, 4K resolution and now 360-degree video. And they've open sourced the lot, and they've stuck it all on GitHub, and it's dual licensed. You can choose whether you want to use it under an Apache license or an MIT license. And they're looking for more people to come and join the effort to accelerate the development, specifically around the processing of 360-degree footage.
Yeah, it seems to me, like reading through the announcement about this, it kind of seems to me like they were developing this as a sort of experimental codec initially for working with higher and higher resolution video, and it sort of got to the point where this is basically the best that there is out there at the moment for working with the kind of video that GoPro cameras are producing. And obviously they want people to make software which can process the video that their customers are going to be generating. So it makes perfect sense for them as a company who are making money off cameras, not off video processing software, to make it easy and free for people to use this codec.
It seems like there's a limited number of engineers on the planet who understand this stuff, and those people are incredibly clever, I'm sure. And I looked at the README on the GitHub repo and slowly zoned out as I scrolled down because
it's all like wavelet encoding cross.
I mean, I don't understand half of it, and it's not like any other GitHub repo where they just have like a taco emoji and a party emoji for the fact that the build succeeded, and then a small readme and then a link to a .io website. This is like comprehensive documentation about how the codec works in theory, and the source code is just brilliant. It's really great. I was really pleased to see this, and it's lovely that when you think about what it used to be, that all of these codecs that we used on a regular basis were all locked up in binary blobs that we had to go and get from various places that were a little bit dodgy and might install malware on your Windows system if you're a Windows person, or might have to be hosted outside the USA or on specific, nominated servers. Now the source code is out there for all these things. It's amazing that this area has completely revolutionized in the last 15 years. It's great.
And it'll be interesting to see whether the sort of stalwart open source video editors now start to use this as an intermediate codec within their tools as well.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if, the common software projects like, FFmpeg and all the others, well, are there any others? start to, grow support for these things if they haven't already. I don't doubt someone's already working on a merge proposal for FFmpeg already to merge this stuff in. It's, it's pretty cool.
That was great. Excellent. That was a good start to the news. Have you got any more good news?
Yes. Arch Linux are dropping i686 package support. All hail 64-bit operating systems. So they had like a 9-month deprecation period over which they're phasing out i686 architecture support. So that's i686. You've often heard it called 32-bit or i386 or i686. It basically means 32-bit x86 support, and they're removing it in a kind of more aggressive fashion than the Ubuntu way that we mentioned previously in an article a few weeks back. In Ubuntu, it's just the images, the 32-bit desktop Ubuntu images are not being built anymore, but the flavors are, and the archive is still being built for 32-bit machines. With Arch, they're properly nuking it from orbit. They're getting rid of 32-bit packages. Yeah. Which is an interesting approach.
I think it's a smart move for Arch. I mean, it's a bleeding edge distribution. It always favoured 64-bit, and even when I was involved in the project, there was talk of jettisoning the 32-bit Intel support. So this has been on the agenda for some years now, and most distributions are going this way. Some of the newer distributions on the block, like Solus, just started with 64-bit support only from the outset. An Elementary have jettisoned 32-bit Intel along the way as well. Mm-hmm. So, I think the writing's on the wall for 32-bit Intel support for most of the Linux ecosystem.
And I don't think it's, I realise there are some people out there who are worried about this because they have old machines. I mean, they would have to have quite old machines or 32-bit embedded machines, things that just aren't capable of running 64-bit OSs. But those machines probably wouldn't be running the latest releases of those things anyway.
Yeah.
And there's community effort in Arch to maintain 32-bit anyway. So there's a community effort to keep that going.
Yeah, so Arch Linux 32 is the fork, and that's a community project to keep the 32-bit Intel archive alive.
So any more good news, Mark?
Yes. In the next bit of good news is that Intel has announced a new family of processor with embedded graphics.
Well, that's not new, surely. They do that all the time.
But what might surprise you about these embedded graphics is that they're AMD embedded graphics on an Intel processor.
Cats and dogs living together. What is going on?
Super gluing Pepsi and Coke cans together. That is, isn't it?
So this is like a new technology that Intel's been developing, which basically allows them to have multiple processor dies on the same chip on your motherboard, and it sounds like essentially they are they've given AMD the technology to hook into this or license it to them or whatever, and then they've bought some chips from AMD to put in these processors so they can have high performance AMD graphics and a high performance Intel CPU all on the same chip.
So I'm very interested in this.
Yeah.
So you may remember that I have a Skull Canyon NUC, which I love to bits, and I love it so much I can't wait for its successor to arrive, which is going to be called the Hades Canyon NUC, which comes out next year. And the specs of that were leaked a couple of months ago, and it just had this hand-wavy reference to DGPU, and nobody knew what that was. And some people were sort of thinking, well, is this going to be some sort of, collaboration with NVIDIA with like an embedded, like the MX150 or something on the board? Anyway, the speculation is now that that's going to be probably one of the first consumer products that has this combination of the Intel CPU with the IGP still, and then the AMD discrete graphics cores on the package with it.
Right, so they'll still have Intel's own integrated graphics, and then have essentially a discrete graphics chip, but bundled in the same physical object.
Is there any possibility that we're going to get our hopes up and, we're going to buy these new machines we're looking forward to buying these new machines with new generations of Intel CPUs, which are, faster, quieter, lower power and all this, with GPUs on board and envisaging in our heads, I worry that we're going to get our expectations set that we're going to be playing the latest games at the latest high resolution, 4K, 8K, whatever, displays. But actually what you're going to get is actually sold as low power with a few extra features that were licensed from AMD that Intel didn't have the rights to. And that's it. Like, it's not going to be a competitor to the NVIDIA 1070 or 1080 or something like that.
I don't think it's going to compete with the top end cards like, the 1080 and whatever follows it. But I think it will sit in around those entry level chips, sort of the 1050, the 1050 Ti. I think that's what they're they're shooting for. And I think for Linux users, this is really compelling as well, because AMD in recent years and Intel for many years have been putting a lot of effort into creating their drivers as fully open source. So you're now looking at a rather heady package of parts here, let's hope at least, and no proprietary drivers required to get that all up and running on Linux.
We can but hope.
Then these things will support, the new display server technologies as well. So yeah, I think this could be very interesting for the Linux space. I'm looking forward to seeing how it develops.
On other good news, Martin.
Yes, good news. 13 AD&D games have been released by GoG. Now, someone's going to need to help me. I think AD&D is Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Is that what that is?
Yes, that's exactly what the text says on the very next line. Yes.
Yes. There it is. There it is. Right. Okay. Yeah. So these are games from the dim and distant past, from the 90s, I believe, that have been lost in a licensing pit for many years.
Yeah, so you might remember games like Eye of the Beholder, and
I do,
and its sequels, and there were many games. They're all set in the Forgotten Realms Dungeons and Dragons universe, and they were developed by a company called SSI mostly in the early 90s, and then they were sold on to various companies as people went bust and had mergers and so on, and essentially stopped being distributed because either nobody knew who had the rights to distribute them, or the people who did have the rights to distribute them weren't interested in distributing games because they, bought the rights as part of another buyout where they had got other assets. So GoG started with the original developers and tracked it down through all the people they could contact, and eventually found who owned the distribution rights and bought them.
Wow. So they said there's a quote on their page that says they contacted Joel Billings, who was the original president and founder of SSI, and that led to a couple of candidates, Mattel or Gore's Technology Group, who had acquired the Learning Company, who were a company that made lots and lots of games back in the day. Right. And that was the hit that they got, and they then got the rights from that company. So for someone to actually go through the due diligence of figuring out who had, and that company probably didn't even know they had the rights to these games. I guess they're happy now because they'll probably get a slice of money for each one sold. Absolutely. I imagine.
And then on top of that, there's the work to actually get them running on modern day machines. And these are games which came with a box with a code wheel in for copy protection. So they've had to come up with a new way of doing that. And all of these games are. There's 3 bundles on GoG.com, and they're each available for Windows, Mac, and Linux.
And are they going to ship with DOSBox like they usually do?
I suspect that's how they've done it. I don't actually know that for a fact, but a lot of the games of this era on GoG.com are basically shipped with DOSBox and a configuration file.
Nice.
Yeah. It's a shame I didn't know about this, because I can see my box set of Eye of Beholder games in my carton just above me, intact with working code wheels.
Nice. In other good news, IBM have released a new typeface. They've open sourced a typeface called Plex. It's their new corporate typeface to replace Helvetica New, and it's available on GitHub under the Open Font license, and you can download the font and install the font very easily. They're just, a big zip file you download, unpack it, put all the fonts on your system, and they're really quite pretty. I really
they are
like
nice.
them. It really, I mean, you can tell it's IBM. It really feels like when I'm looking at the font, just on the Hello World page where they show, their introduction to the font, it kind of feels like I'm on a mainframe. I don't know why, whether it is indeed the font that was embedded in the mainframes of the past, but for some reason it feels like old mainframe font. And I've set it as the default font in my terminal now, and it's really, really nice. It's
Is it monospace, or is there a monospace version?
There's multiple. There's monospace, sans and serif versions.
Oh, really?
Yes. There's.
Wow, they put a lot of work into this then.
Yeah, the zip file has got loads of source code in it, and then there's a fonts directory, and it's got all the builds, and there's a folder called Mac and a folder called PC, and for us Linux type, you just drill into the PC folder, and there's all the font files, just drag them into your .fonts directory, and you're done, or use a font installer whatever. That's all I did. Just drag them into a folder and we're done.
Yeah, I imagine they'll probably be available on Google Fonts as well to embed in web pages.
Yes, there are web versions.
Already be.
Yeah, the web versions are in there as well. So I would imagine that's already been done. Cool. So yeah, good news all round. And that's the end of the news. And now it's time for community news and event. And the first community news item we have is from Ronnie Tucker, who created and runs and has run for a long time the Full Circle magazine, which is an online magazine that's based around Ubuntu. And he's put out a call for help. He's asking for people to write pieces for the magazine. It's a PDF download magazine. It's been going for years. And he's asking for people to just come up with articles that would go in the magazine because, it's difficult coming up with new content every time they do a magazine. So always good to have new perspectives and new content writers. So he put out this call on Google Plus and we shared it around all over the place. And he gave some ideas about things that you might want to write for the magazine. Including writing thought pieces about what you like or dislike about Ubuntu and Linux in general, what helps or hinders your day, a historic piece maybe about how you started using Ubuntu or Linux, maybe give a software review or review a Linux book that you got recently. And there's a whole load of other options in there as well. We'll link to it in the show notes, but it would be really great to see some people give back to Ronnie, because he spent an awful lot of time over the last few years creating Full Circle, and it'd be a great way to contribute. You don't have to be a programmer to contribute to Ubuntu. You can write a review of a piece of software or write a historical piece about how you got interested into Linux in general.
Great.
Excellent.
Next up, Didier Roche is assembling a team to produce a new Ubuntu desktop theme.
Ooh.
Yes, so this is going to be the new theme for hopefully 1804 onwards.
So I think the idea is to assemble a theme and see how it goes, get people to contribute. I think the idea is to rekindle that love of creating themes for Ubuntu. It used to be something people did a lot in the past, and now there seems to be not a huge number of people who do that.
Yes. I suppose there wasn't a lot of scope for doing it with Unity, was there?
No. I mean, there were certainly some prominent people who did some things, like there are prominent people who've created themes and prominent icon packs, for example, that are quite popular. And it may well be one of those steps up and offers their contributions, or it might be something completely new created. We don't know.
I think the other reason that, that interest in creating themes is not just for Ubuntu, but it generally for the Linux desktop, because there was so much churn in GTK for several years. It was very difficult. Every new release of GTK, you had to redo your theme work or in some cases completely do it over. Mm-hmm. So now that's all stabilized. It's also a good time to get back into that. So if there are people out there that have dabbled in this in the past,
right. Especially as 1804 is an LTS, and so there will be a level of stability in that over the lifetime of the LTS. Yeah. And if what you create isn't deemed worthy to be the default, then it could still be something that's offered for download that people could use maybe.
Yeah, so the skills needed, there's a variety of different areas of work in this, but if you know some C programming, if you know some CSS, if you're good at creating icons, or if you just generally have a flair for design, those are the sort of things that are needed in this project.
And I've seen some comments online about it being a contest. It's not a contest. It's just Ubuntu asking for contributions in an area that we haven't had contributions in for a long time. It's no different than us asking for people to help packaging a piece of software or, updating the security updates for VLC, which a member of the community did recently. It's just another way to contribute. And so it would be great to get more contribution in that area, especially if with 1804 being around for a long time. When you think we've talked before about how sticky people are on LTSs, 1404 and 1604 are very sticky, and 1804 will be as well, no doubt. So it'll be a theme that those things we often point out when you see an Ubuntu desktop on TV or in a fleeting glimpse somewhere.
Yeah,
if
that
it can
thing that tells you it's Ubuntu.
Yeah, you can spot Unity with the thing down the side and the color scheme and the stuff across the top. Sometimes people do a bit of CSI type forensics on the screenshots and try and figure out which distro it is, or whether it's some made up movie OS kind of thing. It would be great to have something that is distinctive, so we can say, oh look, they're using Ubuntu for that project, and it's a nice thing to show. So yeah. We'll put a link to the Community Hub thread where you can get involved.
Cool.
The Ubuntu weekly newsletter is also putting out a call for contributors. They want your articles too. So Ubuntu community superhero Simon Quigley has posted on the Ubuntu Community Hub outlining what they're looking for in terms of the participants and how to get involved.
Yeah, it's kind of it's not like you have to write great long articles. A lot of it is going and finding interesting content and summarizing it. It's not a case of
sort of
having
things that have happened, isn't it?
Yeah, they're more reporting other people's content than actually creating lots of new content. So yeah, it's a fairly straightforward way to contribute. It's a bit of a commitment, but if you're interested in getting involved, then that's another great way to get involved in Ubuntu.
Cool.
And finally, Will Cook has posted a message to the Ubuntu desktop team mailing list suggesting they shut down the Ubuntu team mailing list, the desktop team mailing list. Partly because since we kicked off the Ubuntu Community Hub, if you're not aware of it, go to community.ubuntu.com. There's been a ton of discussion that's happened over there, and we've had hundreds and hundreds of new people voicing their opinions, offering support, suggesting things, and basically getting involved and having conversations around the Ubuntu desktop. So it's getting a new lease of life in the Ubuntu desktop team, and the mailing list just isn't really the place to have those conversations. The Community Hub is working really well for those kind of conversations.
Yeah.
For example, Robert Ansell kicked off a thread this week asking whether the guest session was still necessary on Ubuntu desktop. And if he'd have posted that to the Ubuntu desktop mailing list, a mailman mailing list, it probably would have had pretty slim visibility, not very many comments, not very many replies, because the barrier to entry on that list, you've got the people who are already on the list, but then no new people can offer their opinions. Whereas with the Community Hub, people can just go straight to that thread, sign in using their Ubuntu SSO, and voice their opinion about, whether this is a good thing to keep or not. So I support Will's proposal to get rid of the desktop team mailing list. Well, move it onto the Community Hub.
And we have seen some great community initiatives rise up from the hub as well. And in particular, there's a group of people collaborating there, working towards making an official flavour of Ubuntu featuring the Unity 7 desktop.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they've already got an ISO image. I've tested it out already. I've downloaded the ISO. I gave them some feedback about how to make it, a bit more obvious what it is and, what version it is. So it's more consistent with the other images. And, they're working out what packages should be in that ISO image and what they should leave out. But if you download that ISO image, it's a very early days in 1804. But if you download that image and put it in a VM to help test out, that they would greatly appreciate that, I'm sure. But it's Unity 7 on 1804. It's, it's keeping the dream alive.
What I look at there is the speed at which a number of people have coalesced around this project and had a convenient place to work together. I mean, it's come together very, very quickly because it's been in a very polished state for some weeks already.
Oh, really?
We're talking about it now, yeah.
Right, I only tested it this week.
Oh, right. No, I tested it a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah.
Finally, we have an event. And this is an event that myself and Martin are going to. So if you're interested in this subject, come along. It's DevRelCon. It's a developer relations conference, and it's in London on December the 6th, which I think is a Wednesday.
It is.
And it's at the Barbican. We'll put a link to the event in the show notes. You can get a ticket through the website. It's run by Matt Revell, who used to be on presenter of Lug Radio, ex-Canonical employee, ex-Ubuntu contributor. And it's a one-day conference about developer relations, developer experience, and developer marketing. So all the kind of things that me and Martin do on a daily basis, which is why we're going along.
Cool.
I think that's all the news and community news.
What good news.
We can never have too much feedback. Reading your feedback means that we have to come up with less content. So if you're a Redditor, you can comment on our shows through our subreddit, /r/Ubuntu podcast.
And that's all for episode 37. We'll be back next week, where we'll be discussing the Linux gaming renaissance, and we'll bring you a blend of love.
A blend of love.
Oh my goodness,
Golly.
that sounds exotic.
Yes. So thanks for listening, everyone. We're close to the end of the season. Oh, golly. But do keep sending your feedback.
Only 5 more episodes until Christmas.
Yikes.
Oh, we better arrange a curry.
Oh, yes.
Let's
See you
do
next
that.
time. Bye.
Bye. And stop.